Welcome to Skybreak Church Online. We would love for you to check us out at skybreakchurch.com or on the Skybreak Church app to share your story or to help us get the message of Jesus out by contributing. We are in our series, Naked and Unafraid, where we are learning to abandon smallness, push past criticism, and live expansively. We are confident that this message will bless your life. Thank you for joining us.
All right, good morning. You may have a seat. I hope when you went to high five somebody, you did like a fist bump or something instead. We don't want to be sharing germs around here today. Just saying. Hey, did y'all know that today is International Women's Day? Woo! Yeah, I found that out between services and I was like, oh, what an awesome day to be speaking. I'm so excited. All right, well, my name is Kendra Green. If I have not met you yet, take some time and come find me and tell me who you are, because I love speaking up here for that reason, that when I look around, I see friends. I love all of you, and before I get up here, I get super nervous, but then when I get up here and I'm like, I know these people, and I love y'all, and I'm so glad to be sharing the word with you today. So I want to thank Pastors Danny and Janet. They're watching on the other side of the screen there. I want to welcome all of you watching on the other side of the screen. Thank you for joining us. But thank you, pastors, for letting me speak today and share the message. So last week we heard from Pastor Kevin Gerald. We started the conversation about vulnerability, a word that we don't really like that much, right? Like sometimes it's even hard to say. You're like, vulnerability, what is that? But we learned about risking and risk exposure and things that we don't naturally want to do. We learned about King David and how when the Ark of the Covenant was coming into the city, he was just so full of joy. He was excited that he left the palace walls, went down into the streets with the commoners, and celebrated. And he even took off his royal robes and began dancing in the streets. And I don't know about you, but when I grew up as a child, I learned that he was literally naked. Like I literally thought King David was naked. But actually, what he was doing, he took off his stuffy robes. They were holding him back from really being able to enjoy life and be able to celebrate. So he was actually not naked, just so you know. But he celebrated, and he was so full of joy. And when he went back into the palace, his wife, who was watching from the window, criticized him. And she told him, like, why would you do that? Like, she was so disgusted that he would expose himself that way, that he was too vulnerable. But what we've learned is that vulnerability is not actually a weakness. We learned last week that, contrary to popular opinion, vulnerability can be a good thing. What it is it's making a move with no guarantee of the outcome. So vulnerability is making a move without any guarantee of the outcome. It means being willing to take risks, stepping out of a life of comfort, no longer playing it safe. I admire my husband for this, because while I am very much, I'd rather self-preservation, I'd rather play it safe, do good calculated risks, right? Like think about it for a long time before I make a decision. That's my personality. He's like, yeah, let's do it. Like he's ready to have fun and go do all the things, and he's not scared, and I worry. So here we are. I'm the worrier. He's the risk taker. So that's our challenge. Thank you for your prayers. But today we're talking about abandoning smallness. And those two go hand in hand. Abandoning smallness and vulnerability go hand in hand, because it's really about, if you're living in a small way, it's about not making any ripples, right? It's about living life as expected. It's just playing it safe and not doing anything that's going to stir things up. It's staying quiet. That's easy, right? It's easy to stay quiet, not let anyone notice you. It's not safe to make moves and to cause change and to make a difference, because then you're at the risk of exposure, where people can give you their opinions of what you're doing, and you hear all the concerns of other people, and then you start to question yourself, right? But I want to help you understand what exactly it means to abandon smallness and what it means for you today, because it really can be difficult to notice the difference. What is actually popular may not always be big thinking. Some of the most popular people may actually be small thinkers. So let's look into 1 Samuel 16, and let's really start digging our teeth into it. If you want to open up your Bibles, take notes today. To summarize what's going on in 1 Samuel 16, we see the prophet Samuel, and God sent Samuel to go find the next king. He said, I need you to go to the house of Jesse and anoint the next king. Well, King Saul was still the king, so Samuel had to go in secret. And so he goes to the house of Jesse, and Jesse gathers all of his sons, and he has them there for the lineup. And Samuel sees Eliab and is like, oh, certainly he's the king. I mean, those are kingly abs and kingly muscles, and he is literally fit to be king. And he starts taking out his horn to anoint him with oil, and God stopped him. And it says, but the Lord said to Samuel, do not look at his appearance or his stature, because I have rejected him. Man does not see what the Lord sees, for man sees what is visible, but the Lord sees the heart. So smallness can be a heart issue. So we want to look into that today. But Samuel goes down the line, and he's like, okay, if he's not chosen, maybe it's this one. No? Okay, maybe this one. No? Maybe this one. And finally, exasperated, he's like, Samuel, do you have any more sons? Because these are not the ones that the Lord has chosen. Well, little did we know, David was shepherding in the fields. They didn't even call him in. They were like, oh, he's definitely not chosen. Like, let's just leave him out there to take care of the sheep. So they call him in, and as soon as he came, the Lord says, anoint him, for he is the one. So the small shepherd boy was the one who was meant to be king. So that brings me to my first point. We abandon smallness by growing bigger on the inside. You see, King David was anointed to be king as a child. But things didn't change overnight for him. He still had to go back out into the fields, and he still had to be shepherd for many, many years. He wasn't born into royalty. He didn't know how to be a king. He didn't grow up in a palace. He grew up in the fields. His father didn't even consider him to be king. He was sleeping with sheep, walking with sheep, day and night. So I want to help you consider that sometimes you're chosen, but you're not yet announced. David was chosen, but he wasn't yet announced. And too often we feel like we have this gifting on our life or this talent that God has given us, or maybe even an anointing, like God has anointed me and called me to do whatever it is. And if we're not patient enough, then we try to take it for ourselves. We get impatient thinking we know better than God about his timing. And so we strive and we work hard to get it on our own time. But when we take what's ours, when it's not the appointed time, we will fail because we haven't developed the inner strength to handle the weight of that calling and that blessing and whatever it is that God wants to give us. We must go through the process of being proven and growing bigger on the inside. You see, the opportunities that are laid in front of us, whatever you're doing right now, maybe you're working a job that you feel is not going to take you anywhere in life, or maybe the way you're living your life you feel like it's not going to go anywhere but where it currently is. The places you are right now are proving grounds. They're chances for us to arrive at one level and to prove ourselves, to prove we can stay committed, to not bail out when things get hard, to not jump ship whenever the storms get really rough, but to arrive at one level as a doorway into something greater. So if you're a shepherd now, let me tell you that you won't be in the fields forever. You won't be here forever, but you can't skip over this part. Because one day when you're faced with another challenge, you'll think, man, God's been preparing me this whole time. I feel like these last few years for me have been a series of very hard challenges. But it's so funny that now I feel like I'm stronger than I was a few years ago. Every year, challenges got not necessarily easier, but I learned how to deal with them better than I had the first time. So we learn a couple things as we go, we hope. Well, while David was shepherding, what did he do? He learned to do things like write and play music. Think about the whole book of Psalm pretty much he basically wrote. So he learned to write music. He learned how to throw stones. His strength grew. He killed bears and lions with his bare hands. Okay, so he built his bravery. He grew his skills. So he did all of these things in a place of obscurity. God had to know that David could take care of sheep, before he could take care of a kingdom. So maybe you feel like your current reality is impossible and that you don't have what it takes to prove yourself. It's recognizing like, God, I am weak. I am so weak and I cannot do this on my own. Proverbs 24:10 says, if you faint in the day of adversity, your strength is small. Well, duh. But if someone tells you you're weak, you're physically weak, what do? If you don't like your physical weakness, you go to the gym. You maybe buy a couple weights to have at home, and you do some workouts, and you pump some iron. At least we try, right? We try to get more fit. But if we're physically weak, we get stronger. Well, why don't we do that to our spirit, man? Why don't we train our spirit to be stronger? That's something we can actually do. We can't do anything about the size of our adversity, but we can do something about the size of our strength. If we can't change our circumstances, let's work on ourselves. I don't know if you knew this, but inside all of us, we all come in two sizes, okay? We come in small or we come in big. And inside us, we have a mini-me version of ourselves. And if we're not careful about which voice we allow to be the loudest, mini-me wins every time. Anybody remember the movie Austin Powers? Don't raise your hand so proudly. I can't believe y'all know that movie. I'm going to pray for you, church. Well, if you remember Mini-Me, he was like ruthless. He was the first one ready to climb on that table. I remember the scene perfectly. Climb on that table and ready to hit that button to send whoever it was down into the sharks with lasers or the lava, whichever it was. Just two different movies. Mini-Me always wins. But you get to choose whether or not Mini-Me's voice is louder than your Big Me. Okay? How do we know if we have a Mini-Me? Well, Mini-Me is petty. Mini-Me is a comfort seeker. It's self-conscious. It causes us to be slow to compliment and encourage others. We don't do that, do we? Causes us to shrink ourselves, to stay as small as possible so the world won't hurt us. It causes us to pass up opportunities to contribute out of fear of rejection. It causes us to take things too personally, assume the worst in people and what people do to us. It causes us to be unforgiving. Mini-Me causes us to turn inward and shut down and withdraw emotionally. And it causes us to make up excuses rather than owning up to our own choices and our own mistakes. Ugh. Are your toes hurting? Because mine do. I think we all have let our mini-me's rule our lives at some point or the other. But let me tell you, your life is too important and has too much potential to be sidetracked by pettiness. If we're focusing on the big picture of possibility, it's hard to be sidetracked by pettiness. So think big. Scripture says that God is able to do exceedingly, abundantly, above all we can ask or imagine. According to what? The power at work in us. Not by our own strength, not by our own striving, but by the power at work in us. Because there is bigness already at work inside of you right now. And if you get nothing out of this message today, which hopefully you're taking notes and you'll remember lots of things, because it's so good, is that you'll remember I'm made in the image of God, that there's bigness inside of me, and there's untapped power inside of me. In fact, I want us all to say this together and say it really loud, because first service, let me tell you, when they started, they did not believe this at all by the tone of their voices. They were very quiet. So, with strength and courage, let's say this all together. Ready? I'm made in the image of God. There's bigness inside of me. There's untapped power inside of me. Do you believe that? Yes. Amen. So we have a choice to make. We can give in to our mini-me, to our self-imposed limits, or we can push past the limits and step into the wide open spaces that God has given us. So we abandon smallness by growing bigger on the inside. And then point 2 is we abandon smallness by getting beyond the fear fence. We all have fears that we deal with, and smallness is dictated by our fears. We all really are fearful of different things, whether it's spiders or snakes, or maybe we are afraid of enclosed spaces. Maybe we're afraid of flying on an airplane, or whatever the fear is. There's all kinds of crazy fears, but this is not the kind of fear that I'm talking about. The kind of fear I'm talking about today is more like an undercurrent, harder to see from the surface. Like me, for example, I might look confident standing up here, but starting last night, butterflies form. And they're flying, and I get really nervous, and my heart beats really hard, and I start breathing heavy. But you don't know that, because it's an undercurrent. It's a little bit of a fear, like what if I get on stage and I say the wrong thing? Or what if I forget all of my notes? Or what if something happens when I'm on stage? You never know, right? So it's a little bit of a fear, an undercurrent. But we try to dismiss these fears like they're no big deal, like, I have a concern, like I'm really concerned about this, or we have a hesitation, like I'm not sure, or maybe we say it's an inability to make a decision. Well, I just don't know what to do, so I'm not going to do anything. Okay, it's indecision. What this comes from really is something deeper, like inadequacy or rejection. What if they don't like me? Maybe a fear of failure. What if I mess up again? It's these fears that drive us and cause us to live small. The Apostle Paul was a mentor to Timothy, and I'm so grateful we get to see some of their dialogue. And if you can imagine Paul more as like a fatherly figure to Timothy, he considered himself that. And he's writing to Timothy, and he tells him something, and I'm sure he didn't say it. If we could understand the tone for which he was talking to Timothy, it wasn't like, oh, Timothy, God's not given that to you. Like, he was probably frustrated. Like, he probably has written him several times, like, I heard of what you're doing, and let me tell you, you are not given a spirit of fear. You are not given this timidity, but of power and love and self-discipline. It's like a parent talking to their child, like, I know what's best for you. You are not given this. You have access to power and love and self-discipline. Have you ever seen an impala, an African impala in the zoo? Yeah, raise your hand if you've seen an impala in the zoo. We have a picture of one. They're so pretty. Some of you may have seen it on someone's wall as well. Well, the African impala can jump 10 feet high and 30 feet long, okay? That's really far. And it serves them very well when they're in the African grasslands and probably going to be on somebody's dinner menu, okay? So they can jump away really fast from their enemy, okay? Or predator, whatever you call that. However, if you find them in a zoo, you'll see them behind a wall, maybe only 3 feet tall. Well, how is it that they can contain an impala who can jump so high and so far? It's because impalas fear taking a leap when they don't see what's on the other side of the wall, because they can't see where they're going to land. Maybe that applies to some of you today. We get trapped behind these walls of fear when we're more than capable of overcoming them. Maybe you built up that wall in order to protect yourself, but now you become a hostage to it. And let me just tell you, I am someone that's very familiar with living behind walls. Some of my story is that as a child, for many years, I was sexually abused. And because of that, I built up walls to protect myself from people, because I was afraid of getting hurt again. Not necessarily of that happening again, but I just didn't want people into my inner life to really know the real me. Because I thought if I let them in, then maybe they won't like me. Maybe they'll, leave me. And so my defense mechanism is that I push people away. And I want to stay to myself, and I want to close myself in behind my nice walls. And I can decorate my walls really pretty. And those walls, I can plant plants around them. Those walls look really nice, and we get comfortable behind those walls, right? But thankfully, my parents took me to church every Sunday. I got plugged into this church when Jared and I were boyfriend and girlfriend. And I've learned through this church that I can appeal to the bigger me. That my bigger me can be bigger than my little me, than my mini me. That if I put myself out there and I choose to jump over that wall, that there is life there. There is an extraordinary life. There is a flourishing life. But you have to choose to take a risk, to build relationships with people, to let people in, to let people see the real you. So we get uncomfortable. And you have to choose to get uncomfortable and go to small group. Small group's not always comfortable when you don't necessarily know everyone at first. So we got to go to small group. We got to go to growth track. We got to get involved and volunteer and put ourselves around people who are going to encourage us and lift us up, and people who are going to push us to get beyond our smallness. We need that. And I'm so grateful that God had me planted in a church, because Lord knows where I would be if I stayed behind that wall. So if that's you today, I want to encourage you to get beyond that wall. We will never do anything great in life if we don't do a few things that scare the mess out of us. So what are some things that scare us? Maybe being the first one to apologize is scary. Maybe being the one to admit your faults is scary. Simple things like deciding on a college to attend, that could be scary. Going to a job interview, signing up to serve your country, starting a business, these are all scary things that have great results. Maybe asking someone on a date is scary. Come on, guys. Go ask somebody. Not through a text message or a Facebook or Instagram. Get beyond that fear fence. You got to leap beyond that fear fence, because what's vulnerability? No guarantee of the outcome. You may not know where you're going to land. You may not be able to see your next step. But what I can guarantee is that God's going to be with you. He promises that in his word. He'll be with you wherever you go. I can promise you that the power of God is going to be at work inside of you. As Christ followers, we are called to believe in things we don't see and to speak of things that are not yet. We're called to acts of faith, and we're designed to walk by faith and not by sight. The Apostle Paul addresses the believers in Corinth, and he says he's appealing to them really as a father figure, and he's telling them, dear Corinthians, I can't tell you how much I long for you to enter this wide open, spacious life. We didn't fence you in. The smallness you feel is coming from within you. Your lives aren't small, but you're living them in a small way. I'm speaking as plainly as I can with great affection. Open up your lives. Live openly and expansively. If you're coming in here today and you feel closed in your life, like maybe your life is suffocating you, that you're feeling a little claustrophobic from your current circumstances, I want to tell you, God never meant for you to live that way. That there is a way for you to break free from that, but you've got to take a risk. Paul was appealing to them to not squander one moment on things that will pull them down, to not waste the marvelous life that God has given you. So let's break free from fear today. You want to do that? So let me give you some pointers on how to do that. So we can be freed from fear by, one, believing God brings good things. We have to believe that. Because a lot of the times, we believe that God is the one who brings hard things into our life. That he's the one that takes things away all the time. That he's the one that causes us pain. When really, we live in a broken world. We're going to get hurt. Painful situations are going to take place. But God is here to bring you good things. And if all you're doing is staring at the wall, all you're going to see is the wall, and you're going to completely miss the gate that just opened for you. So get your eyes off the wall. God wants to bring favor and blessing into your life, but you have to allow him to do that. You have to receive the favor and receive the blessing. And then 2, be free by being generous even when you feel small. Many times we say things like, well, when my big payday comes in, then I'll be a generous person. I'll be able to give freely to whoever I want and be able to tithe and give giant offerings to my church. But if you're not faithful with the little, how can you be trusted with much? So give what you can when you can. And when you give, know that that's a seed. And if we don't plant, if you're not putting in seeds when you have little, then how are we going to reap a big harvest? So be generous even when things feel small. And sometimes we get bogged down by our circumstances and we withhold our emotions from people. Choose to smile. Choose to hold the door open for people. Choose to help people out. Help our neighbors out. Just because life is hard for us doesn't mean we have to make it hard for others as well. So the number 3, we want to break through old patterns. Just because your parents did things a certain way, or your aunts and uncles, grandparents, just because your family choose to live life a certain way, that doesn't mean that you have to as well. Just because you were brought up in a mindset doesn't mean that you have to continue that mindset. If you feel like you are under a generational curse, you can be the first one to break free of that curse. You can do it. Choose today to be the first one to break free of whatever is holding you back. You can rid yourself also of patterns of jealousy and comparison, because let me encourage you, what God might want to do through you may not be modeled by anybody else. You might be looking and comparing to other people saying, well, they have this and they're doing this. Well, that's what I need to do. Let me just say, God wants to do something through you that's unique. That's not going to be modeled by anyone that you're looking at on Instagram or anyone on your left or to your right. You have to trust God with every single step and trust that he's going to take you where he wants to take you. Okay, so we abandoned smallness by growing bigger on the inside. We abandoned smallness by getting over that fear fence. And then we also abandoned smallness by having a sand and stars vision. What does that mean? Well, Abraham, when he was still Abram, was given a promise by God. And God told him, "Indeed, I will greatly bless you, and I will greatly multiply your seed as the stars of the heavens and the sand which is on the seashore." Well, when God gave him this promise, the circumstances were not ideal. His wife had been barren for many, many years and was yet to give him a son, let alone any child. So how was he supposed to be a father if he didn't even have one child? So you can understand Abraham's confusion. Like, God, I'm not understanding the math here. And maybe you're standing at the same place that he was, stuck between the facts of your current reality and the truth of God. You know the facts, but can you really trust God to believe the truth? So God really wanted Abraham to think big, to think beyond the barren conditions of his wife. And did you know 20 years later, 20 years, some of you in this room are not even 20 years old. 20 years after this promise was made, Isaac was born. And Abraham's family began to grow and get bigger. But that was 20 years of growing bigger on the inside. Can you imagine the doubt that he probably faced? He had to grow bigger on the inside. 20 years of believing that God would be faithful to his promise. 20 years of seeing the sand at his feet and the stars up above and remembering that promise. Well, what's the sand and stars vision of your life? If you don't have a sand and stars vision that scares you a little bit, you're not thinking big enough. What's your sand and stars vision? Maybe just think for the year. What is your vision for the year? For the next 5 years? For 10 years? 20 years? Maybe your vision is to see your family sitting next to you in church one day. It could be a dream to start your own business. Or maybe it's just a stirring in your heart, this desire deep in like the pit of your stomach. You're like, I'm not sure what this is, God, but I know I want to help people. But you're faced with the facts of reality. Maybe you have little or no college education. Maybe you lack the resources. Maybe you've prayed and you have invited your family and your friends to church until they are blue in the face and you don't know what else to do. Can I ask you to keep looking up? Keep looking up at those stars. Keep looking at the sand in your feet and believe that there is more that God wants to do. God is for you. He wants to do so much in you and through you. But here's the deal. Your sand and stars vision won't usually come as a miracle. Although I do believe that God is a miracle worker and there is nothing beyond his hand. But Abraham and Sarah, when they had that baby, what do babies do? They eat and they poop. So they had to change dirty diapers. They had to get up for middle of the night feedings. They probably fought over who was going to get up with that baby next. Like, I'm sure Sarah was like, I got up with him last time. Like, can you get up this time? I'm going to have to be with him all day. Can you please get up? It's real, y'all. Well, St. Augustine put it this way. He said, without God, we cannot. But without us, God will not. He wants to do it through you. There's work to be done. And it's really a step-by-step process that's held together and kept on track by seeing something that we don't see. And that's really hard for our human nature, to see something we can't see. A sand and stars vision doesn't only require you to think bigger, but also long-term. Because our lives are not just about us, but it's about the next generation and the next generation. Like that song said, God wants to bless your family and their children and their children. I can't see the faces of my grandchildren because I don't have any yet. I'm sure they're going to be pretty darn adorable, though. But my grandchildren are going to be affected by the things that I do today. And how I affect my grandchildren is going to determine how they affect their grandchildren. So my choices today have repercussions, good or bad, for many generations to come. So I abandoned smallness by investing my time and my energy and my resources into my local church, into this church, so that someday it will still be thriving when my grandchildren are around. I'd love to be able to sit in church with my grandchildren and possibly my great-grandchildren sitting with me because of what I've done through this church. I abandon smallness and I get out of debt and I save money and I spend less than I bring in so that I can set my grandchildren up for success. Because of my grandchildren, I exercise, or try to, and eat well, I try to, and take vitamins and do things that my husband considers weird. He's always like, that's so weird. But I do things because I want to be around when my grandchildren are around. I want to be able to thrive and spend time with them and pray with them and bring them to church and worship with them, do things with them. But when we think small and we focus on temporary pleasures and temporary results, like if you're working out just so you can go eat that candy bar later, you're probably not going to stay very consistent, just telling you. We got to change our motivation. We have to dream dreams and see visions that give us a reason to make a difference. So I want you to ask yourself a question. It's kind of a hard question. And when I asked myself this, it kind of hurt a little. If I change nothing about my life in 20 years, will I be a bigger person than I am today? If we change nothing about today, what will it be like in 20 years? Start thinking about how old you're going to be in 20 years. Start using that eye cream. If you don't use that eye cream today, in 20 years, you're going to wish you could go back and do it. But in all seriousness, we all could agree, I'm sure, that there are things we could change if we knew in 20 years we could be so much further down the road. We could be bigger people. We could have made so many changes in 20 years of life because of the sand and stars vision that God has put inside of us. Let's be people who live with a vision that outlives us. King David, he did amazing things in his lifetime. He is someone I admire in the Bible because he did so many amazing things. But do you know when he did his most amazing things? When he made the biggest changes? Was when he was near the end of his life. It was when he committed to build a vision that he knew he would not see. David said, "My son Solomon is young and inexperienced, and the house of the Lord, or the house that is to be built for the Lord, shall be exceedingly magnificent, famous, and glorious throughout all the lands. Therefore now I will make preparations for it." So David made ample preparations before his death. Here's what he wasn't saying. He wasn't saying, you know what, I'm retired. Like I've done a lot of things. I've done a lot of hard work. I deserve to just enjoy life and just spend my money, right? He wasn't saying his son couldn't do it. He just recognized that he had resources, that he had knowledge that his son didn't have access to. And so what he did was partner with his son. They partnered together so that they could build God's magnificent, amazing house. So I see that in our church today. We have some that are young. We have some that are older in years. And I see how God has blessed this church generationally because we've come hand in hand in saying there are things that God can do and we work together. and when we see long term. I'm so thankful for our legacy offering and the things that our church is doing for the next generation, and the next generation, and the next generation. But here we see, in a sense, that David was still willing to take off his robe. He was still willing to dance in the streets. He was still willing to get his hands dirty. He wasn't just going to sit back, but he was willing to say, I have a contribution to make. There's things I can do today that are going to make God's house great. His selfless, passionate, and big character was showing through here. So we all have the opportunity, starting today, to abandon smallness, to live big, to live beyond today. And when you're looking at the stars, guess what? That fence in front of you, that ain't no big deal. When you live with a big vision, nothing can fence you in. So be who God made you to be and live that open, expansive life. Maybe your first step in taking a risk and being vulnerable is simply to invite Jesus into your life, to ask him to meet you where you are. And maybe you've already made Jesus the Lord of your life. I'm going to invite you today to expose those parts of your heart that you've closed off to him, the parts of your life that you have not fully trusted him with. And God knows what that is. I feel like right where you're sitting, you can have a simple conversation with God and let him know, God, I haven't trusted you with this area. This is why I'm being fenced in. This is why I'm hiding behind that wall. And just ask him to meet you there. But with everyone's eyes closed and head bowed, I'm going to ask you to just give people a moment of privacy, because I really feel like God is beckoning us all forward right now. That he's speaking to each of us in a special way. I don't know your life, but he does. He's able to help you pinpoint those areas in your life that you need to give to him. God made an appointment with you today to be here. You are not here by accident. He wants you to trust him with your life. Maybe today you'll leap over the fence and fully give your life to him. He wants to restore what the enemy has stolen. He wants to heal you and to bless you and infuse you with hope. And this comes with the gift of salvation. So if you have not ever received the gift of salvation, I have good news for you today. Today is your day. So with nobody looking around, I want to know who I'm praying for. If you're sitting here and you're saying, I've never given my life to Christ, but I know today I want to. Today I'm ready to get rid of fear, to get rid of anything holding me back. And if that's you, I'm going to ask you to lift your hand just so I know who I'm praying for. Just raise your hand. I see those hands. I see that hand. I see that hand. This is your moment. Don't pass this opportunity up to meet Jesus. He doesn't ask you to get clean before you come to him. He just wants to meet you right where you are. I see that hand. Is anyone else? Just one more moment. God loves you. Jesus died on the cross for you. He didn't die for you to live a safe life, but to risk it all for his cause. And I'm going to pray. And if you would pray along with me, say it loud enough for your own ears to hear and for your neighbor to hear in support of them. Say, Dear Jesus, thank you for dying on the cross for me. Cleanse me of my sins. Take away my past. I give you my hand. Lead me into my future. I trust you. I love you, Lord, and I thank you. In Jesus' name, everyone said amen. Let's give it up for all those that prayed that prayer today. Welcome to the family of God.